all came to me like a lightning bolt. I was like, I have to create a business for people like this, which is the majority of Americans, where they can go no matter what's in their bank account to get the help they need. And on the same time, I was on a weight loss journey. And I remember thinking, when I wanted to get physically healthy, I have so many places to go to get physically healthy. But if people want to get financially healthy, where would they go? And I thought, you go to a financial gym to get healthy.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm here alone today because Sophie is out there supporting Kai as he scored his first role in a TV show. So that's pretty amazing and exciting. And I'm here at home, here to talk to you about an incredibly important topic. You know, we talk about shame a lot. You've heard me talk about the F-shame or fuck shame sort of approach to what we do. Today is no different. I'm going to try to do a few of the different roles here. And so I want to start us off with the review of the week. Drum roll, please. I hope I did you justice, Sophie. This one comes from Mark. And Mark says, you guys are so raw and open as a person who has cheated and has had addictions. I find so much relevance in you guys' podcast. My girlfriend and I have grown tremendously spiritually in the past few months. Thanks to you guys. We are working through some of the toughest moments we have had and individuals in this life, and we couldn't thank you more for your help. Man, thank you, Mark. Thank you for saying that. I'm so happy that this is serving that role for you and your partner. I think that is one of the main reasons that we started this podcast, was to be able to share our victories and wins and difficulties and struggles and tools so that people like you can benefit. So do me a favor. We don't get a lot of guys who leave reviews. So please, please, please contact us, ignited.me or Dr. D. Jaffe or Sophie.Jaffe on Instagram, or just shoot us a good old email, info@ignited.com, and we will get you one of our care packages and some goodies for you to have. Maybe some of Sophie's amazing stuff. If you're into it, let us know and we will get you a package. And as I say that, I'm going to rely on a quote for Sophie's part here today that I go back to a lot. And it speaks a little bit to what this comment was from Mark, but it is, why not go out on a limb? That's where all the fruit is. And I think of this quote in so many different areas of my life, but when it comes to this relationship sort of stuff, as Mark just mentioned, I really think of it as, you know what do you have to lose, especially when things aren't working well, but go out on those limbs. Yes, they're flimsier. Yes, they're a little less secure. They're not in the center. They're not where you're used to being. But oftentimes we find some of the biggest gifts out there. And so I hope for those of you listening that you will follow that. And today's episode is going to deal with that. I mean, we're still in fuck shame, but we deal with shame on something we haven't really talked about today, and that is shame around money. And I was going to ask if you've ever had shame around money, raise your hand, but I don't really think I need to ask that. I've got my hand raised right now. I've had it in my life before, for sure. We live in this commercially based market economy where you are always made in some ways to feel like you don't make enough money, you don't drive the right car, you don't have the right house, you don't fill in the blank that matters to you. And Shannon McLay, who we have on today, is the founder of an organization called the Financial Gym. And you know, we take care of our health, we take care of our brains, we sort of exercise in so many different ways. I love this concept of getting in there and dealing front and center, head on with your difficulties, where you're weak financially. And what I love about Shannon is that she does it in a way that really, really speaks to how we do so many different things here at Ignited. And that is by really meeting you where you are. So we're going to address this shame component head on around money. Shannon does a lot of really cool little nifty pieces of advice here in the middle. So pay attention. If this is an issue for you, feel free to reach out to these guys. You know, they they're really here to help primarily the disenfranchised, those of us who don't have strong beliefs around money, those of us who don't have strong foundations, right? To me, that's where the rubber meets the road. Those are the people who need the most help. So I really, really hope that this serves you. I learned a lot from this interview with Sophie and Shannon, and I hope you will too. You know, Sophie comes from this place where she just trusts that money will appear. I am much, much more fearful. I learned a lot in this episode. I hope you like it. See you on the other side.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixed all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Zoom side chat. It stopped being a fireside chat months ago, unfortunately. Would have been nice to have you here, Shannon, for that. But, you know, here we are on the computer, weirdly enough. And, you know, this month's theme is ckShame. I don't know how comfortable you are with swearing. Fuck shame is sort of how I know.
Oh, thank God. I can be myself here.
You can be 100% yourself. And I mean, we don't talk about it here very often at all, but I think money is absolutely one of those deep, deep sources of shame. I know in the context of relationships, it's a huge problem for so many couples. So we can't wait to hear from you, and we're going to dive in really, really deeply. But I'd love you to just introduce yourself to our listeners, tell them your story. It's a pretty interesting story of how you got to where we are right now.
Yeah. So I tell people I'm an entrepreneur that never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I graduated from college 20 years ago, had a business degree. I just wanted to make money. That was it. I used to tell people all the time, I'm not changing the world. I'm just making money. And then,
that's
you know,
ironic.
Yeah. Then I hit 30 and I remember telling people all the time, I had friends turning 30 who were, you know, freaking out because they weren't married, didn't have kids, like all the check boxes you're supposed to have. And I remember telling my then husband, now ex-husband, spoiler alert, that I was like, 30 is going to be so easy for me because I have this great job. We're married. We have a kid, great house. And I had a big 30th birthday celebration. 6 months later, had a complete meltdown. I was like, I don't want the job, don't want the husband, don't want the kid, don't want the house. Like I signed up for somebody else's life. I don't know whose life it is. And ended up getting life coach through that process. And one of the first questions he asked me, ironically, was, what is your purpose in life? And I thought, I mean, you know, my first was in my head was like making money, and that doesn't feel like something good when you put it in the context of purpose.
You don't put that on like a t-shirt and wear it around town. My purpose is making money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could, there's people called D-bags who might do that, but like, I don't, I was like, didn't feel right. And then, but I didn't know what it was. And so we started doing some work, and then in the process, I ended up reading a book about happiness that was written by a Buddhist monk. And it was my first aha to like the next chapter of my life, because he said, it's 400 pages, but at the end of it pretty much said to find long-term sustainable happiness is to help other people without expecting anything in return. So like opening a door and not expecting a thank you, like that degree. What
book, what monk? Everybody's going to be asking themselves that as we're talking right now.
Yeah, it's called Happiness, and Matthew Ricard, Ricard.
We'll have a link in the show notes, everybody.
Yeah, it was, for me, it was a turning point. And I thought, and it was like a aha of like, that's what I want to do, but not sure how to connect the pieces. And then I was doing a career shift, ended up working for Bank of America Merrill Lynch at the time. And I was working with Merrill Lynch financial advisors. And I tell people at that point, I became woke to the advisory space that, 85% are men. And I always say there's nothing wrong with that. I married a man, I birthed a man, I'm a male lover, but it felt very unfair that there was, if somebody wanted something different, you couldn't find it. So I thought,
And
maybe
by the way,
that's
not 85% of people in the world are men.
Right.
Just
but financial
advice. Not clear about that.
Right. Yes. The financial advisory space is very much, which I've always worked in that. It was fine, but I thought money's really personal. And I thought maybe I'm going to help more women or other people become advisors. Maybe that's my, moving into this purpose zone. And I became a Merrill financial advisor. To work with me, you had to have 250,000 in assets. So I couldn't even talk to you unless you had that much. And I didn't think anything of it when I joined because I'd been around money on trading floors and I thought this is going to be easy. And I did find people with wealth. And, but I always laugh now because the gym never, is it sound bad? My cleaning ladies here.
We're all good.
I would say the gym never would have existed if I took my Merrill mentor's advice and he told me to pre-screen all my calls, make sure they have money before I even meet with them. He's like, make sure you even meet because it's not, they won't even count. And I thought, I'm not going to ask somebody before we get coffee, how much do you have in your bank account? That's just ridiculous. So I was like, I'm going to say yes to everything. So I said yes to every meeting. So my first meeting with what I became to call my pro bono clients was this woman who said, looking for a financial planner. And she said, I have $250,000 of student loan debt and I make $50,000 a year. And here we go into the shame, right? She's like, and I feel like I'm unlovable. Like who would want to marry me with all of this debt? And it was a lot to unpack, but I was like, I don't know how to help her at Merrill, but I wanted to help her. And then I started doing all these plans on the side. It became this dirty little secret that I was helping people with no money. And I loved my pro bono clients so much. And I had my true aha time where the week started out with a couple, they had over $1 million with me. We were doing a review. Their portfolio was down 3%. And they were just like bitching about where their money was. It was like it was the end of the world. How are the kids going to go to college? How is this going to happen? How is that going to happen? And I spent an hour of my life making them feel better about being a little less rich. And it was just like really soul sucking. And then 2 days later, we did a plan for a woman very similar to what we do at the gym now. Here's bulleted. Here's how much you need to save. Here's how you deal with the student loans, credit cards. And at the end of the meeting, she said, you're saving my life, right? And I was like,
a pretty different conversation.
I was like, this feels so much better than that. Like, and it was literally, it all came to me like a lightning bolt. I was like, I have to create a business for people like this, which is the majority of Americans, where they can go no matter what's in their bank account to get the help they need. And on the same time, I was on a weight loss journey. And I remember thinking, when I wanted to get physically healthy, I have so many places to go to get physically healthy. But if people want to get financially healthy, where would they go? And I thought, you go to a financial gym to get healthy. So all there, I said, the advisors are trainers, they wear jeans and t-shirts. It doesn't, just like a regular gym, doesn't matter what's in the bank account. Our clients pay a monthly membership fee like a regular gym. And that was 7 years ago. I knew nothing about starting a business. I had no idea. I went through everything I own. And so fast forward now, 7 years later, we have 4 gyms in the US, 2 in New York, 1 in DC, 1 in LA. And we've worked with, over 6,000 clients at this point. And any clients ranging from starting with us with negative $200 in the bank because of bank overdraft fees to $8 million to, earning nothing because they're unemployed, to, 6-figure, 7-figure salaries. And it's just like a regular gym. We literally see everything.
And
I love it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And also just like the confidence that you're giving people and the layers of healing and this idea. And, we're all about fuck shame. So it's eliminating shame from the narrative and seeing themselves in a different light. And, very much a parallel to losing weight, because it's not necessarily about the weight. It's about what's going on internally and the stories that we write about and addiction.
And the idea I mean, there's so many places I want to go on this. First of all, you're going to do a workshop. You don't know this yet, but you're going to do a workshop for my hero participants because they need to hear this.
Yeah.
Because, just like weight, as you mentioned, so just like in addiction, when people look bad because of their drug use, that's the obvious stuff. And money, there are obvious versions of money shame, right?
Yes.
Can't go out to eat at a restaurant. The car you're driving is 15 years old. All that stuff is the obvious. But so much of what you're talking about is resolving the inner pain around, I don't even know what to do about this. We literally today, as we're recording this, launched the Once an Addict, Always a Fill in Your Blank campaign. And I can almost imagine that in a very parallel way, maybe society has less of a specific title for it. But if you're broke and stuck and debt is killing you, there's a hopelessness and a helplessness that sets in, which is like, I'm going to live the rest of my life like this, avoiding creditors, running away, not being able to take people out on a date if I'm single because I don't know how to pay for the dinner.
Yeah.
I can just already imagine there's this huge pain that happens for people.
There's so much pain. And, what I tell people that I've discovered in the last 7 years of, which I found my purpose, by the way. But what I found. Isn't the world
so much better once that happens?
Everything feels right. Like everything just kind of clicks. And even when things go wrong, it feels right. So
I love it.
It's there. And what I've seen in the last 7 years of helping people with their finances is that, and I say all the time, money is the ultimate taboo topic we have left out there. Like, we are more comfortable getting physically naked with somebody than financially naked. So, we talk about body shaming or whatever, like there's an empowerment movement there, but there's still this, untabooness to money. And so there's a lot of shame around it because we're not talking about it, because we probably didn't talk about it in our home. A lot of couples don't talk about it. We've had couples married 10 years who come to us, they have kids, a lifetime together, and they don't know what's in each other's bank accounts.
We've had the same thing around sex. And what's really interesting about what you're saying right now, in a similar way to the sex conversation, is we see all this stuff outside.
Yeah.
And we think that's what our life is supposed to look like. So if you look on Instagram or you look on TV, people pulling on their brand new convertible Audis and a 7,000 square foot mansion on 15 acres riding horses. They're having sex naked on the horses as the music is playing. It's like, we think we're supposed to try to achieve this life and talk about the gap in reality in this country, especially, but in the world, there might be 500 people in the country whose lives even look similar to that.
Yeah. I say, except for 1% of the population, the rest of us need to focus on our money. Yeah. Like, that's it. Like, it's like we all could do better with it, except for 1% of the population. But because of the Instagrams and because of the stories, there is that. Have you ever read the book Dorian Gray or seen the movie, The Picture of Dorian Gray?
Yeah.
I always make this analogy because he's living this great lifestyle, but there's this like picture of this like evilness, like the debauchery that he's exhibiting, like living physically is taking place in the picture. I say it's financially, it happens all the time too. People are living this like outwardly, this great life. Behind the scenes, they've got credit card debt. They can't pay their bills. 71% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So I always say, it doesn't matter the size of the paycheck.
And just to be clear, because we're all about radical transparency along with ckShame, we were in that place. I mean, when Sophie and I were preparing for this episode, Sophie talks about this all the time. In our first 8-9 years together, money was a constant conversation.
I mean, honestly, only in the last 2 years has the fighting stopped and the arguments and the tension around money. Like, it's literally in the last 2 years.
And part of that is literally because Sophie has started making substantially more money. So for the first like 8 or 10 years, I was supporting us, but first of all, I come from a very old model of support. So like, I was an academic, on my good years, I would break 6 figures and we live in LA. It's not a cheap place to live. We started having kids and we moved, to bigger and bigger apartments. And so we were struggling and and Sophie was working the whole time, but was working with not just passion projects, but sort of like building who she is. And in the last 2.5 years, money started following that. And you were right. It's not until there's a cushion where you can breathe from it. And it's suffocating when you're in that place.
It's also, I want to hear what you have to say about this, but I also think it is very much a mindset, which is where you came in. Like, our mindsets are different energetically when it comes to this stuff. So even though we had the dollar sign in the bank, that I felt secure enough because I have that security within me and that knowing that everything's going to be okay. I could say that to him in all the arguments, maybe like, let's say 4 times a year, we'd get a big blowout argument about money. I could say, let's go through this, just like any fears in life, right? Okay. So we lose everything. Then what? We moved to your parents' house in Manhattan. Shucks. We moved to my parents' house in Los Feliz. Man, like, let's really walk through this. Are they going to let us live on the streets? Well, no, and like, it's just it's a different reality. And for me, personally, I didn't need that cushion to feel safe because the safety is within me. Yeah. And I knew even to have a third baby, I wanted to have a baby girl. His reason for not wanting a baby was the amount of dollars in our bank account. Now, that's a very different reality than I live in, but I wanted him to feel secure. He said, we either make this amount of money or there was some other thing. And I'm like, okay. So I made that amount of money. And then we got, so it's like a very...
To be fully fair, we definitely jumped in the baby before that money was there. But
you felt more.
You manifested it though. We're big.
I had to speak his language. I had to understand and go in there and be like, this argument isn't going to stop. Like, the way that I saw it, I may be wrong. It wasn't going to stop when he was in control in that masculine way, in that fear-based way, in that controlling way. So I said, I'm going to take control, and then like, we'll be fine. And now we are. And it's and it's like, it's an energetic shift. It's the same thing happens with other ways that we shift energy in sex. We talked about this with a recent guest when it comes to sex and masculine, feminine. It's not about male, female. It's just a more masculine way of dealing with things. And I have that security. And so now we're starting to, as a couple, have that security for our family based on those beliefs, right?
Yeah, we see so many people. You just had different money love languages, and you were on 2 different pages. And we say we love working with couples because we're the disinterested / interested third party. Like, you never know what kind of fight you're walking in the middle of. Like, what comes out in the conversations. And a lot of times what it is, it's like different, just like there's different love languages, like there's different money languages. So like, Sophie, what makes you feel confident, might not make your partner confident, and vice versa. And so, what we're trying to do is we try to get couples on the same page of like, as far as goals and like working together and like having healthy conversations around money, because most of the time we're having it from a point of anxiety or frustration or fear or deprivation.
Or exactly.
Right.
Like,
instead
I want this thing,
abundance.
but I can't have it. So that's where the problem.
So those are very unhealthy, starting points on a conversation, right? But that's typically where a money conversation starts from. So you're starting from a negative place anyway. So the conversation is not going to turn into a great one because your foundation for the start of the conversation is flawed.
We both came from, I think your love language also comes from what you grow up with and what you're used to, and your programming around money and the choices that you make around these different energies. And
but that's interesting because in your family, maybe when you were 7, 8, there was security around money, but then from that point till after high school,
right? So I just chose to do, like, you either do what your parents did or you do the opposite.
Yeah, but that's easy. I feel like that's easy to say, right? It's easy to try to do the opposite, but especially around money. And I want, one of the questions I want to ask is like, what are some tangible advice you give people to become more financially fit or more independent that way? Because some of this is skills and knowledge. Like, it's a little bit like fitness. And yes, it's easy to say, people know where you should work out, et cetera, but that's a very broad thing.
Sure.
What should I do? Like, when I go to the gym, what should I do?
Well, that's a problem too, right? Because I always tell people, like, I have a Peloton bike and I love riding it. And that's how I keep myself, fit. If somebody told me I had to do burpees all day long, like, I'm not going to do burpees. So there's a lot of ways to get fit and healthy. Or if somebody told me keto was the way to go, no way. Yep. No fucking way. I need a glass of wine and like a loaf of bread when I'm having a bad day. So it's not going to work. But it works for other people. So we see the same thing with money. So some things, like I always say, when people even say the word budget, I always say budgets are like diets. No one wants to be on one.
Yeah.
Right. Just even saying that word feels like, I don't want to be on a budget. Yeah.
We
would just avoid it.
Years about doing a budget. For years.
Yeah.
We never were willing to sit down and do it.
It's not the way that I run my life with food.
It's not the way most people
run. I've never had a budget
run.
in my life though, so it's not mine either.
But for you thought you wanted it for security, to feel good.
No. For me, and maybe again, I really want to get into some tangible tips. For me, my mind works pretty well with numbers. So I would always have a rough sense, not exact. I never balanced a checkbook in my life.
Right.
But
you felt better if you knew what went where. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a rough sense of the pool and a pretty good sense of what we were spending. And as long as one didn't supersede the other, I felt pretty comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
We were, like you said, when we started, we were pushing that envelope on a regular basis with literally with months where I would either have to borrow like $500 to $1,000 from my mom for rent for that month, or we would pay rent after the due date, after the grace period, because we didn't have money in the middle. So like literally, just so people are listening, paycheck to paycheck to paycheck for years.
Yeah. And you couldn't break out of that cycle. And then it feels like you're never going to get out of that cycle because you keep seeing it over and over again. And so we see this a lot. So, the first things that we say is that money and personal finance is like another language. It's just like Greek or Spanish or whatever. It's learning another language. And the problem we have is that we're not likely learning it at home. We don't learn it at school. We're not learning it at our jobs. So then we have this shame of like, I don't understand my money. I know I should. Why don't I? And our response is always, why should you? Like, you didn't learn it. You didn't learn Greek. Why should you know Greek?
Yeah.
But there are places to go to learn it. That's the important thing to know, is that let go of your fear and shame that you don't know it. There are places to go. And I always say, find the place that fits for you. Like, the Financial Lane, we have so much free content. I always say it's really also very hard to learn a language just reading it. So it's really hard to read books on personal finance. They do tend to get jargony and like maybe, and there's not like the dictionary, you could really figure it out, and it takes a lot of work. And so I love podcasts. I really do. I have a podcast called Martinis in Your Money, Living a Better Life, One Cocktail at a Time. But there's so many great podcasts out there now, especially around money, that you could find the voice that makes sense to you. Like, get to the, and there's YouTube channels too. Financial Diet has a great YouTube channel. Like, find the things that, like, the way you want to learn the language, because there are places you can learn it that you feel comfortable with.
And then, do you have virtual coaches now?
Yes, we work with clients in all 50 states.
Love it. Okay, go ahead with the tips. I love this. This is so great.
Yeah. So find the places to learn language. Also, like, the second thing is, before you get started on your own stuff, is like really, and we do a webinar about this, like, how do you change your mindset around your finances? Like, how do you kind of drop some of your baggage on your storylines, and like what led you to feel like this? 98% of people have financial anxiety. And we know when we have anxiety, we're going to avoid things. We don't want to look at it. We don't look at the bank account. Like, it doesn't look good, but it's happening, it's so even if you're not looking at it, it's happening, and it's going to impact you at some point. So really kind of tackling what that is that's taking you to that place. And the biggest things that we focus our clients on are goal setting. And number one is like thinking about the things that make you survive and thrive. So when you're thinking about how you spend your money, what are, good starting point exercises? Like, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you need in your life to survive or thrive? Like, why do you get out of bed in the morning to work hard? We all work hard for our money. Why are you doing it? And we call them your sacred cows or your non-negotiables in your budget. Like, how do you spend your money? And for most people, the number one thing is travel. So we've got a lot of depressed people right now in the country because they're not traveling, but travel's number one. Health and wellness is up there. Family, fur babies is pretty high up on there. And those are like the things that people mostly list. But what happens is when you compare that list to where you're spending your money, most people are spending their money on Amazon, on dining out or Uber, or Google or Seamless or DoorDash, and then other like random, Uber or like spending things. So
there's a misalignment between what people in their heads perceive that they want and where they're spending their money, which means their money doesn't get to go to what they really want, which means they feel a lack and a deprivation.
Right. And so if you quote waste $27 a day, you've blown $10,000 for the year. It only takes $27 a day to waste $10,000. So the next step then we do is like, let's become more mindful of how we're spending our money. Because the number one complaint we hear from clients at the gym is, I don't know where my money is going.
Wow.
I know I make it. I don't know where it's going. And there's plenty of apps and tools to track your money. But again, people are avoiding it. So they don't know. So then we kind of have people just more mindful of like, how did you spend your money in a day? Start a tracking process, not with an intent to judge or shame yourself like, oh, I bought coffee today. I don't care how much coffee you buy. Like if it brings you joy, buy your coffee, but just become more aware of where it's going. And that's part of the work we do with our clients. Like we're tracking it, like they know we're going to see it. And we always say, we're not here to judge you. I don't really care how you spend your money, but I do care that it's on the things you love.
Yeah. And I don't want you to hide from it. I mean, when you put it into perspective, $27 a day, $10,000, that's a hell of a family trip. Like,
right?
If you care a lot about travel, 10 grand is like the trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
For a month. Like that's a serious experience.
Yeah. And that's one side of the equation of like the tangible, like becoming more mindful, like, without judgment, but like, where's the money actually going on a regular basis? And then on the flip side is losing this like deprivation mindset and moving more into like the abundance mindset. So just like, Sophie was like, I'm going to make more. We push our clients. One of the things when we give them a financial plan, when we sit down with them, we ask them all the things they want to accomplish in life. Like, do you want to have a house? Do you want to travel? What are all the things? If money wasn't a factor, what does it all look like? And because people are feeling so like living paycheck to paycheck, they can't see beyond that. But we're like, let's just take money out of it. Let's lay it out there. And then what we do is we literally tell them how much they need to make. So we've had clients start with us making $60,000 a year, and we'll tell them you need to make 90. And at first, clients are like, well, yeah, if I can make 90, I'll make 90. And we're like, hey, we're not telling you right away, but we're saying, this is your number. If you want all these things to happen, this is what you shoot for. And 9 times out of 10, we have clients hit that like within months. 100%. They're like, hey, I just got this new job because I was looking for jobs that pay $90,000 a year.
Or your awareness.
Or I was able to go to my boss and say, hey, negotiate. I need a raise. So I love what you're saying, because we've gone through that literally. And Sophie mentioned in the last 2.5 years, we've picked ourselves out of the paycheck to paycheck life. But even before that, I mean, Leo is a baby. So we're talking like 7.5 years ago, when Sophie wasn't making any money, and I worked like 4.5 jobs. It was insane. Like,
and he was miserable.
I was working like 70-hour weeks, driving all around LA because there was 4 different jobs. And we were miserable. And I was like, I came home to sleep. I would wake up and I would start work again. And we would go on these walks around the neighborhood. I remember the stroller. So he was like, we can't keep living like this. This is insane. This is crazy. And I couldn't see my way out of it.
We were also, remember we were on that trip.
So we went on a trip. We went to Cancun with her parents. We had no money to do anything. So our parents took us on a trip. And Sophie was like, okay, what do we do? And I said, well, if you can take one of the things we need to pay off of my plate, I could drop a job that pays for that thing. It was a really simple kind of exchange. So we literally sat down. I'll never forget this breakfast. It was like a breakfast. The parents had the kids, the grandparents had the kids. And we sat down and we broke down, what would Sophie have to do at work to go from making $0 a month to $2,500 a month? It wasn't an insane amount, but going from 0 to something felt really hard until we mapped it out. Sophie was making cleanses and selling food to people, etc. So how do we do that? We literally mapped out what she would have to do. The next month,
I made it.
She made it.
Yeah.
The next month she brought in, because you're so right. When you're unclear, when you're just like, well, I need to make more money. What does that mean? $5 more? What is more?
Yeah. Everything's more.
50,000. And then in addition to the amount, it helps sometimes to say, well, what are some options that you have in your world to bring in a little bit more, a little bit here? And I think you're right. I mean, not only did she hit it the next month, but the month after that, she actually beat it even, and then kept it that amount for a few years. But that gave Sophie, for the first time, Sophie's worked her whole life. It wasn't that. She was worked since she was 15. Yeah. But for the first time, I think there was this idea of, okay, if I just know what I need to make, I can go make it. And that's been a repeating motif for us. Yeah. When we were looking to buy a house, we were like, here's how much money we need to make on a monthly basis to buy a house in LA. It took Sophie like a year to get to that amount because it was a much bigger increase. But but once she knew and she had an idea of what it would
it's
take,
half the battle.
she could work for it.
Yep.
It's half the battle. We we give that number to our clients, and then we give them the path and the coaching and the guidance to get there. And the biggest thing we have to do is take away that limiting mindset, right? That you're making 60, you can't make 90. It's like, well, why not? I mean, have you tried?
Right.
Let's work on how we get to that. And you're just literally, shifting the universe. And our average client is paying us about $99 a month for the gym. And we have people who are like, I don't know if I could join because I don't know if I could afford it. And I always say, if you can't afford this, then you need to join our gym because you're missing some things. And, no one should live a life where $85, $90 is going to make or break you, because then that means you're not doing the $10,000 vacation or whatever. Like, we need to help you figure this out, because no one should live a life like that.
So true. I always love victory win stories.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through a case. You mentioned like indirectly some different kind of clients that you've worked with, but you obviously no names or anything like that. But walk me through a case of somebody who came in literally not seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, worked with you for a certain amount of time, what that change looked like for them.
Yeah. We have so many. So if you ever want inspiration, just go to our Instagram account. These are more common than not in our clients, which I think is great. But one of my favorites is a client who started with me over 4 years ago. And she was, a woman in her 50s living at home with her sister in California and just miserable because she wanted to buy her own house. And she was sitting with a bunch of cash. She had $300,000 of cash. She could technically buy a house. She just didn't know how much she was spending and like where her money was going. And so we did her first review. She tells me, her first meeting, she tells me live concerts and travel are her sacred cows. The things that are important to her. So we do her first quarter review. 3 months later, I show her where all of her spending is, and 90% of her money went to shopping. And it was eye-opening for her because she saw all the charges and she was like, yeah, that's, surprising. And she said, well, what happens is I get depressed. I'm home with my sister on a weekend. I get depressed. I leave, I go to Starbucks, and then I go shopping to Target or whatever. And I buy things and come home and whatever. And so I said, okay, I don't want to take away the shopping because retail therapy is real. Like, we get that it's serving a purpose, right? So I don't want to take that away because I know she's miserable in the house, but I was like, but how do we free up some more room for the things you like? So then she said, okay, we set a limit for how much she could go into Target with, like $50 was her max. Like, that was it. And then she also said, I'll try on clothes. Like, that will be how, cause she just buys things and doesn't try them on. They sit in her closet. And I was like, this is a first. I've never had a client say they're going to get financially healthy by trying on clothes.
Yeah.
But that was the goal for her, that she knew that would stop her from spending. So 3 months later, we do a review and she spent a bunch of money on shoes because shoes always fit. Right. So I was like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. You still are following your rules. What can we do next? And then by the third quarter, she was just killing it. Her numbers were amazing. And in that end, she was like, but I'm having fun. And she went on a trip to Nashville. She saw Tom Petty live before he died. So live concerts and travel. And she still had extra money. And I was like, yeah, because you didn't waste it on the things you love. She's like, but I'm having fun. And I was like, yes, financial health can be fun. When you prioritize how you're spending your money on things that bring you joy, it's it's totally possible.
And it's empowering.
Yeah.
It's empowering.
I have another client who's a young Black woman who started with me. She was 24 when she started and had a great job, was making, $80,000 a year at an investment bank and doing well, but stressed about money. She was supporting her mother. And this is something really big we see, especially in the Black communities, supporting your family. And so, her mom was living with her and not paying rent, which I didn't know that was part of the story when I first started working with her. And then you were looking at it and I was like, well, here's what's not working with your budget is that you're paying too much in rent. It's okay when you're splitting it in half with your mom, but your mom's yet to make her half. So really your rent is double than what we've planned in the budget, right? So I said, for me, learning her, I was like, I would just kick the mom out. That was my goal. But, she didn't want to kick her mom out. So I said, well, then you're going to have to make more. Okay. If this is going to be, and I get it, you love your mom, you're going to support her, then her number was $120,000, to make all the things work. So we started negotiating where she currently worked. They weren't willing to budge. And I said, you're going to have to look for a new job, because sometimes getting what you're worth means leaving the relationship. I always say your job is like a relationship. It should feel good in both ways. Like you should be valued and they should value you. So I said, we're going to have to start looking for jobs. So she starts the job process. We start looking. She gets a job offer. She got a job offer for like 95. And she was so excited because she was like 95. I was like, hey, your number's 120. So like, first of all, you never accept the first job offer. Yeah. And I was like, what are we going to do? And we did this combination, coaching back and forth with bonus and like salary comp. And between the sign up bonus and a guaranteed bonus and a pay increase, she got to the $120,000 number.
That's amazing.
We love that.
Yeah. And then after she started getting paid that, then we're like, oh, look, you have money left over because you are making more.
You're in an abundance mindset.
Here's what's important for everybody to hear. And we talk about this a lot around relationships, and I've talked about it a lot around addiction, but here we are bringing it up about money. We have this thing around all the aspects of our life that happen between our ears. Mm-hmm. How do we manage our money? How do we think about money is one of those. Mm-hmm. What can we ask for in terms of raise? How much we're worth, right? That's the money side of this. In addiction is what am I tied to and what can I not give up? In relationship, it's what do I need? You know, what kind of partner am I going to attract? And we think those things are set. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes we literally don't know what's possible. And so hiring somebody that has a different language, has a different set of skills, who's been doing this for a living for a long enough period of time, what it gives you is insight. Like when Sophie and I need help, we go to a therapist or we go to a coach because they're going to look at our situation. We feel stuck, but they're going to look at it from a completely different perspective and say, well, have you tried this, that, or the other thing? And oftentimes we find at least some of the recommendations are at least relevant enough for us to try, and they get us unstuck.
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing you took this person who felt like, not only do I have to take care of my mom has no money for rent. I'm not going to kick her out and I'm not making enough money. She was constantly probably just looking at, well, I'm stuck in that place. And you said, well, you have options, but out of all those options, you're only willing to pick one. So here's the way to get to that one. It felt scary. It probably felt like jumping off a cliff to quit a job that is paying you. But in order to get what you want in life and be happy, you need this thing, and you help to get to it.
Yeah, it's so true. I tell people when they first come to us, it's like they throw puzzle pieces on the table for, you know, like, hey, you figure it out, you know, like they're just like, I don't know what to do anymore. And what we do, what a coach, a third party does is they're going to put the pieces together in a different way that maybe you didn't think about. And for us, what I always say is sometimes the pieces don't fit because maybe you're not making enough, or maybe, so the puzzle needs to be bigger, or maybe we need to take out some pieces. Like maybe you do need to sell this house. Maybe this needs to happen, but it's somebody else looking at how to put the puzzle together differently that changes the way they're looking at the puzzle. And sometimes people are just looking at the piece like, this doesn't fit. And it's like, you're right, it doesn't fit. Yeah. But here's why it doesn't fit. And here's what we need to do to change how and make it fit.
Yeah. We all need that support from again, we work with coaches. I mean, we work with couples and we coach them and we help them live these beautiful, bright lights. Well, like we need that too. And I've been a personal trainer since I was 20. I have a trainer. Like it's just the way it works. Like if my trainer doesn't come, I won't do it because life happens. And
you don't want me to train you?
And you want to have the person who's good at our trainer. It's a free benefit for our teammates to have trainers, you know, at the gym. Amazing. Most of our trainers have trainers. Yeah. You know, like we talk about money. So it is definitely not taboo at our place, but like we talk about it so freely, and most of our trainers have the trainer, even though they do it for a living, they still want to talk to somebody else too.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for this.
This is going to be amazing. I think this is the first time we've talked about money on the podcast. So this would be really, really fun for people, and probably also challenging. We'll have a link to the to your financial gym so people can check it out. And I'm sure a lot of people will say to themselves, you know what, I need to dig myself out of this spot.
Break the cycle.
Yeah.
So you're worth it.
We have 5 questions that we ask every single guest on. It's one of our favorite parts.
Before we get to that, I just have one last closing thing. I'm wondering if you can articulate this better. So I believe that money is just energy, just like anything else. Mm-hmm. How would you, for someone like, I feel like I say that constantly to friends, people who are struggling. I used to say that to myself. Mm-hmm. Can you say that in like a succinct, you know, cohesive way of just like,
Yeah, I think you need to not think about it. And this goes back to the language in terms of money, because especially women, we just don't have this natural like connection to money. It feels dirty. It's like, I don't want to rely on money. There's just like a weird dynamic. So, what we say is like that, it is energy. So we say it's power. Like money is power, and we all want power in our lives. And so it's the power of choice, and it gives us freedom to do these things. We just kind of take the money is energy, because like a great example is, I love the book Think and Grow Rich, but I didn't read it for the longest time because rich was just a weird, I didn't relate to that word. So I was like, who does this? It's essentially a book about like the secret, doing all the things, that you do. And it's a great book. I've read it multiple times and I practice it, but like, I didn't make that leap because I didn't relate to the rich word.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes we're missing it, especially the word money for women, because when we think about money, it usually stresses us out, causes anxiety. Like the word money brings a lot of negative feelings. When you go back to your background, most people don't have a positive backstory with money. They saw their parents fighting, saw their mom crying at the kitchen table, like knew what was like, it was like, it creates a lot of anxiety. So we kind of just try to take money out of the thought process,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
verbiage, because we're like, whatever we need to do to say, I want more power in my life. How do I get more power in my life? I have more flexibility when I have more.
And don't you feel like, relating to this, don't you feel like with energy, with positive energy, for example, with, that abundance mindset, like once you have some, then you get more. Once you're empowered, then you just become more and more liberated. And then you believe in yourself, and then that gives you more power. And then it just builds and builds and builds. And then you're in a whole different mindset.
You take yourself in a whole other, one of our quick other story. I had a client who started with this 4 years ago with one of my other trainers. And the first few months, she was so anxious. Like the trainer's like, this is a lot. She is so anxious. She had to get a therapist, the client, because the money anxiety was stressing her out so much. And there was a lot of hand holding. It was a lot of work. And then she started to break through her barriers. And then like her life just started to change. Money started coming to her. She was getting promotions she didn't ask for. One time she donated to the gym like $250 for a scholarship. She won a $250 like Visa gift card, like in that day.
That happens to Sophie all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, I think part of what you guys are both saying, it's happening to a lot of us all the time.
But you're not paying attention.
But there's also the opposite. If you're holding on to it so tightly that you won't put it into the world, then it won't be coming to you in these other ways. Because I heard one of our friends, Chris, talked about this a lot around money, and it has to do with this abundance versus scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
People think of money as a finite resource, which means that if I get money, you can't have it. And if I give you money, then I can't have it. And what he talks about is, look, when you're creating value and you're generating value in the world, money is one of the ways that the world shows you that the universe values that work. And in the same way that happiness and energy is not a finite resource.
Exactly.
We could all be happy, right?
Yeah.
We could, if we stop looking at other people to compare ourselves. There's all this stuff.
Yeah.
But if we stop doing that, we could all be happy. It's not like if I'm happy, Shannon has to suffer. That's of the wrong way to think about happiness.
Right.
And he taught me like money's the same.
Yeah.
When you give money to others, you're showing them appreciation and care, and you're empowering them as well, especially if they're lacking, right? But part of what the world then says to you is, hey, you've empowered other people. I'm going to empower you. We're creating more power in the world.
I always say the rising tide lifts all ships. Yeah. And, just collectively, let's rise up above all this and help the next person out.
Exactly.
That's my purpose in life.
I love this. Thank you for that, Sophie.
Perfect.
All right. So in the context of what we're talking about, it doesn't have to be about money, but what's the best advice you've ever received in your life?
A few things, but I didn't receive it personally, but I read, Sarah Blakely wrote, the founder of Spanx said, if you have a big idea, don't tell people about it because, there's a lot of naysayers. Like she had a lot, she essentially built up Spanx and built it before she launched it and told people. And when she did, they were like, why?
Yeah. And you worked on it for 2 years alone.
Yeah. So for me, I think the best is like to not, if you're like, don't listen to the naysayers is really at the end of the day. Because if I did, at 7 years I've been building this, I've had hundreds of people tell me it's a really bad idea.
Sure.
I've had thousands of people say it's not, because we've worked with thousands of people. So
I'm the same way. Sophie's the same way. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so great. Henry Ford said, right, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Right. And we're in this world, we just want so much validation from other people. It's like, validate yourself. That's it.
I love it. That's so powerful.
What about one of your proudest moments to date?
I have so many, honestly. They happen in little things with the gym. I tell people have asked me, like as we've gone to different hurdles. For me, it's like these little moments where every time I see a client success story, and I recently sent a newsletter out to our clients, thanking them with gratitude for I'm on 7 years of this journey. And it's because of them I keep going, because I'll get like a DM saying, hey, my credit score went up 60 points, or hey, I just got this new job and I listened to your podcast about negotiating during the pandemic. And every single one of those feels like the greatest gift in the world, really, because I think of all the times if I turned back and went back to work for the bank, this person's life wouldn't have changed. So every single person feels like a win.
That's the best.
Beautiful.
On the flip side of that, what's been one of your hardest moments?
Oh my gosh, the gym has almost run out of money 4 times now. And that's what, we talk about, you're driving the ship and it's running out of money and you're like, no, but we need to keep this going. And I always say it's like you're challenging the universe, to say like you're defying it, because you're like, no, we're not going down. And the money has always come in. Yeah. Sometimes it feels really tight. Like we've never missed a payroll, but it's been like one payroll short. Yeah. And I've cried myself to sleep a lot. The shower is my favorite place to cry, because you muffle the sounds and like,
I thought you would get a good echo actually, but
your sounds are muffled and you're already like wet. So it's like, that's my favorite place. I've cried a lot, but you have to push through. This episode
is full of tips. I love it.
A lot of different ways.
On that note.
Well, the work we all do, it takes a lot out of us. I mean, you just talked about one way in which it does that. What does your self-care look like in life to make sure that you show up the best? You talked about the Peloton. Anything else?
Yeah, Peloton. Definitely wine or vodka are in my self-care, but actually it's just time to myself. I love as an entrepreneur, like you could work 7 days a week. And early on I was working 7 days a week, because you're like, if I'm not doing it, who's doing it? And I, 2 years ago, realized I'm divorced now and I have my son every other weekend. And I work on the weekends. I have him, especially now he's a teenager. He doesn't want to hang out with me. So I'm like, well, I'll get work done too. But on the weekends I didn't. I was like, I need to unplug. So I stopped scheduling client meetings on those weekends or doing work. And at first it felt very unsettling, because I was like, I'm taking off a Saturday. Like I'm not looking at my cell phone on a Saturday or Sunday. It stressed me out initially. But then I realized I needed that to refuel the tank, because I was running on empty. And so now I preserve every other weekend. I preserve as like a no work weekend, and I hold it. Like I won't schedule client time. I stick to it, and I really refuel the tank during that time.
I love it. I'm the same way, because years ago she made me do it. But it's funny. I feel a little lazy every weekend. I don't work.
Yeah.
It's like there's a voice in the back of my head that's like, you're an entrepreneur. You should be working 18-hour days.
Yes, that should. Mm-hmm. It's the same as the big movie stars with the horses. It's the same. Like it's a thought of what I should be doing instead of what's right for me and my being.
I had to let that go. But then you know what I realized? I'm like, okay, so I'm taking off 4 days out of 30. Like and I'm talking about weekends. Like, okay, give myself a break. Yeah.
We're
plus
good.
I work. Yeah. It's okay.
Totally. And then what about, so this podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
It's honestly my purpose in life. It's to bring happiness to other people. And I see happiness, happening when their financial health is better. So I'm ignited every single day by the work we do. It's the last 6 months have been challenging in general, but, I have constant reminders every day about the power of the work we do. And it keeps me going, gets me out of bed, gets me excited to do what I'm doing. Work weekends.
Beautiful.
Love it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for inspiring us and giving our listeners some inspiration when it comes to this like tricky tricky issue.
Yeah. And tips. And I can't wait for them all to show up at your gym.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Tag us, tag Financial Gym.
Yep.
Because we really want, if we can eliminate this other area of shame, it'd be really, really beautiful, especially for those of you who are couples and, as Shannon mentioned, have been struggling for years with this.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.